save a prayer for those who care. I keep the faith, but no one will dare to hold my hand until the end. When all the pieces fall into place, my body's weak, the mind is tired, but there's a fire that heals deep inside. I close my eyes and stretch my soul to gather up the nerve to carry on. Daisies everywhere.
Kristin,
Hi, Philippos.
welcome to the Marvel Talks.
Yay. I'm so glad to be here. And by the way, I love your book. That Marvel stands for, the acronym was brilliant, and I love your book. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much. Coming from you means a lot. That's why I'm trying to use consistency in my branding. You know, the podcast is also called Marvel, and yeah, it's a nice way to keep inspired and self-motivated as well. I can say by having some sort of consistency in your communication. So let me say a few things to our viewers. I'm really happy to have Kristin with us because we share quite a few interesting and compelling themes in common around motivation, around management, leadership. So I'm really thrilled to have this podcast. Let me just say that we will cover the following bullets in our talk. Hopefully, we will have the time to go through them. First of all, we will see what's the road to career success according to Kristin's elaborate work and experience. Then how to achieve great career clarity and execute a winning job search. And there we will circle around UMAP, which is one of the fundamental pieces in Kristin's work. Then we will move into my favorite topic of motivation and engagement in the workplace. And we will also try to touch on a few common management mistakes which erode, let's say, employees' loyalty, and they lead into higher rates of employee turnover, which circles around another great book of Kristin, Your Team Loves Mondays, right? That's a title, is it correct?
That's correct.
Which is a management book. And this is more or less the thematic content of the talk. Let me simply begin by saying a few words about Kristin. Kristin Sherry is a globally recognized career expert. She is a winner of the 2020 Career Innovation Award by Career Directors International. Congrats.
Thank you.
That's a very recent, right? It's a recent.
Yeah, I just won that
last
award. A couple of weeks ago. It was super exciting. I was on a meeting when the email popped up and I screamed in the person's ear.
That's incredible. She is also the creator of the UMAP career profile, which uncovers the 4 pillars of career fit. She's an international speaker, a trainer, an author of 2 Amazon international bestsellers, UMAP and Your Team Loves Mondays, right? She's the managing partner of UMAP LLC that certifies coaches, career services, and HR professionals as UMAP coaches and workshop facilitators. Have I missed anything out? I mean, your CV is so long, we can spend the whole podcast
which would be very boring for us and the listeners.
I think do you think the bullets cover the?
Yeah, that sounds like my work. Yep.
Fantastic. How was
really? I'm just passionate about helping people live out their potential. That's the short version.
That's a nice blurb as well. How do you experience the COVID madness and the lockdown? Do you still have the sort of strict lockdown rules where you live? Is it North Carolina?
Yeah, I live in North Carolina. So our cases have never dipped down yet. We haven't had the downward trend. They're still rising. Okay. And so after the lockdown, we had phased opening. So we had phase 1 for a few weeks. And that was you could could go out of your house places to other people's homes, for example. And then they had phase, and I think you could have indoor gatherings of up to 10 people and outdoor gatherings of up to 25. And then phase 2 happened, and we're in phase 2, but because our cases are spiking, they've extended phase 2 for 2 weeks. We were supposed to move into phase 3, but we're not because of the spikes. So we've got a rise in hospitalizations as well as cases. So I actually kept saying to my husband, I just need the lockdown to last a few more weeks, because I was writing Maximize 365, a year of practical tips to transform your life. I was writing that during the lockdown. And if I get a change in my routine, it throws me off with my writing. And I was in a routine of writing 7 days a week, and I wanted things to stay closed so I would stay focused.
So
and I finished it.
The lockdown, is a fuel. You utilize the lockdown so as to fuel and propel yourself into finishing this new book that I'm going to ask you about towards the end of the podcast, because we have quite a few books, existing ones to cover. Published ones. Okay, here in Cyprus, things are more relaxed. We have sort of gone to the last phase, but things are not very certain yet because of the airports and the tourism. So hopefully things will go back to normality. Let me take you a few years back. Actually, we talked before that it's a 5-year anniversary since you left the corporate world. Happy anniversary, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, 5 years this month. And it's funny that it didn't occur to me. You had to be the one to bring that to my attention. I missed my anniversary.
2015. Yeah. So you were leading a team of around 30 people in your previous career in the learning and development, I think, sector.
So I worked in operations management before that, and that was the team of 31 people. And then I moved into learning and development at a smaller team in that role.
So do you have, and you left completely the corporate world, and you became a freelancer and a coach and writer, and then your new journey began to unfold. Do you have any regrets leaving the corporate world and going solo?
None, because I really wanted to do it sooner than I did, but I allowed fear to keep me where I was, because I had this mentality of, I had a steady paycheck. And I think what COVID has taught us is there really isn't such a thing as job security. So you might as well do things on your terms.
That's a great angle to bring into the discussion, because I want to ask you the following. Your career pivot and your career shift, was it the sort of spark to the fuel to what followed next? Because I know that you are a career coach, so your own personal transformation journey was the spark, or the sort of the key ingredient that led you to develop into who you are today. Does it make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I was good at my job. I was responsible for associate development and training in the organization, for onboarding of associates. So I had a team of people who did that, and I was responsible for process improvement and strategy and things like that. But I just woke up every day just not wanting to go to my job, and I didn't really have any idea why. I had a good relationship with my coworkers. I had a good relationship with my boss. There really was no reason for me to not like my job. I was effective. I was a top employee. So I couldn't figure out what was going on, why I wasn't happy. And throughout that process, I started doing some work with a mentor. And I started doing some self-awareness exploration and values exploration. And I hit a gold mine of really explaining what was wrong and why I wasn't happy. Because I think we're too close to ourselves. So it's difficult for people to really diagnose what the problem is. So it took another person coming into my life and helping me look at my situation and why I wasn't happy, even though on paper I was successful. And I can't even tell you, once I moved into what I call my zone of genius, I didn't create that term. That's Gay Hendricks, who's credited with that term. When I moved into my zone of genius, that's where I'm in that state of flow. I'm really good at the things I do. I really love the things I do. That changed everything. I didn't even realize it was possible to enjoy my work as much as I do. I told my husband the other morning, I feel like I'm getting paid to play.
That's incredible. I had a similar experience and story because I also did a leap. I was a lawyer for 15 years, a partner in a big organization, and I had a very similar experience. I was not happy and content. I'm burned out, but I couldn't find the right moment in time to quit. And it is through a coach. A coach helped me understand that quitting is not the end of the world, first of all. Secondly, I didn't really care continuing the path I was at. And the facilitation of the coaching session, it was a single coaching session that tipped the scale for me, led me to the path that I am right now. So, which begs the question as to when is a good idea for somebody to shift and to change and to do a career shift. Is it possible to ascertain that? Is it only possible to do it through a coach? When is the right time to quit or to change careers?
That's a great question. So I will say that it's not sustainable to stay in a situation that you're miserable in, because eventually other people are going to get clued in that you're unhappy and they might proactively let you go first. It could start to affect your performance. You start procrastinating when you're trying to avoid things that you don't like doing. So as far as a good time, I do think that as soon as you realize you're not happy, you need to start having a plan. I'm not the type of person who will say, just leap and quit your job, it'll all work out. I think that you need to be smart about it. So what I did was I saved 6 months of expenses. I recommend saving 3 if you're in a dual income home. And if you're single, save 6 months of expenses and then figure out what is it that you might do next. So you can do a few exercises. You don't have to work with a coach. What are the things that you must have in your next career move to feel happy and fulfilled and satisfied? What does that look like? What do you want? And what do you absolutely want to avoid? So think about your experiences. What were times that you were happiest, most fulfilled and satisfied? And what are things that just really are a deal breaker for you? Is it getting micromanaged? Is it commuting in traffic? Like, what is it you don't want? And then think about all the times that you were happy in your life and write down a list of all the things. It's kind of like an ideal day exercise. So even if you hated a job, what did you love about it? And once you pull out all the things that you loved, it starts to give you a sense of what an ideal day looks like. And then talk to people who know you and do an exercise on what I call your reflected best self, where people reflect back to you, what is the value that you really bring? So it could be people in your family, it could be people you've worked with that have reported to you. Just ask people if they'd be willing to give you feedback on what is better because I'm there, what's different because I'm there, what's the value that I bring. And when you start to have all of these key words of what you're good at, what you want on your deal maker list, and what an ideal day looks like, you can start messing around on job boards, for example, with some of the key words to see what's out there that I hadn't considered. Or do you want to work for yourself? You can take the entrepreneurial assessment by Gallup called the Builder 10 profile at gallup.com and see what your entrepreneurial talents are. I think it's $20 US for that assessment. But if you start to gather data and what are the patterns? And if you're not good at finding patterns, talk to somebody who's strategic, a friend, and say, what are the patterns that you see in all of this information? And then if you're not getting anywhere, then you could consider reading my book, UMAP, which walks you through the process of self-discovery. Oh, well, yeah, that's it.
I've got it. I've got it. Yeah, it's a great
Yeah, but
book.
I always try to help
Mhm.
people do the free option first, and then if that's not working out, try the book. And if you just really are the type of person who needs to work with someone, I don't do individual coaching, but you could find a coach at myumap.com and someone who can work with you. They're all well trained on how to help people find their next.
I think, Christine, in my experience, and what you're saying makes perfect sense, that people are allowed and encouraged to seek to redesign their careers and their lives in
Mhm.
ways that are meaningful to them. I strongly believe in that. I mean, we need to have the audacity, you can say, or the bravery or the courage to make our lives better. But I think that that's the key problem, is that many people, especially when they are in an environment that they feel burned out and they feel demotivated, and their morale is really low, they don't really, they cannot really see that they have the right to seek happiness. They have
Mhm.
the right to try to make their life better. Then they feel doomed. That's my experience. Who am I to design a job in a way that will make me happy? Jobs are meant to be soul wrenching. Jobs are meant to be boring. Jobs are
Yep.
meant to be, I think the first thing is for us to understand that we have the right to seek to make our jobs more fulfilling and
Yeah,
our lives
there's
more
there's
happy.
something very specific. When people are unhappy and they don't like their jobs, there's something specific wrong and they just don't know what it is. You're either not using your natural talents to do it, so you feel like you're swimming upstream, like you're going against the grain of yourself. The environment you're in or the manager you're working for doesn't honor your values. They violate your values either on a daily or weekly basis. You're not doing things that are in that preferred zone of genius from a skill standpoint, or it just doesn't fit who you are, your personality. There's something wrong. And if you break down and look and see all the things that are important to me, are those being violated here, then you need to leave that organization or at least that manager. If you're not using the skills you enjoy or the strengths you enjoy, you need to actually career transition into something else. So there are ways to actually get down to what's wrong. But you're right. I think a lot of people do think, well, every job it's called work for a reason and every job sucks. Well, I work really, really hard and I work quite a number of hours, but I'm having so much fun. I have to try and restrain myself to work as much as I want to, because I would work all around the clock. I'm having so much fun. And I didn't think that was possible. I thought, yeah, there's going to be things that you hate about every job, but there's nothing I hate about my job, because I have an assistant who's wired opposite of me. So all the things I don't like, she loves. So we work well together because we play off each other's talents.
Which leads me to UMAP in a way, because I think, and I would like to talk about the 3 pillars of the book, or the 3 ingredients of the job redesign, or the career redesign, if you may. First of all, how did you come up with the title UMAP?
I was just walking down the hallway and it popped in my head. So I was talking to somebody on the phone recently, and I'm trying to remember who I was talking to, but they said something along the lines of, or maybe it was they sent me a Facebook message, I don't know, but I was either reading or listening, and they said something along the lines of that there's all of this creativity and innovation that floats around the universe waiting for a willing recipient. So that's probably where I got it from, but I don't know. It just popped into my head and I just knew it was right. And I went from there. And so, like you brand Marvel everything, I brand UMAP everything as well. It's the name of my company. It's the name of my career profile. It's the name of the book. It's the name of the certification program. Yeah, everything.
And it also suggests that you are the map, or you have the map to your next.
A map of you. It's a map of
Yeah,
you.
a map of you. It's precisely that, and I think it's spot on in that way. I've seen in the book that you basically talk about the 3 pillars of the model that you suggest and you provide.
There's 4.
4?
There's 4, yeah.
Okay, it's define yourself, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. There are 3 modules in the book.
Modules,
That's
yeah,
right. Find
modules.
yourself, blaze your path, show the world. My mistake,
Yeah,
yes.
the 4 pillars of career are, yeah, it's a different thing. The modules, okay. Let's take the modules. I'm very interested about the idea behind them. So find yourself is the first module. When we're talking about career shifts, which is one of the key points of our talk, first of all, you need to develop the self-awareness, right? So as to understand what you said before, who am I? What am I not? What do I value? Am I correct? What motivates me? With what types of people would I rather work with, or what kinds of manager should I have? What rubs me the wrong way? Is it sort of the idea behind this module? Finding yourself goes to the idea of understanding who we are and giving us the luxury of knowing who we are before we delve into the next step of where to go next.
Well, if you look at what people do, the first thing that people do when they lose a job is they say, okay, time to brush up my resume. They're focusing outwardly. So everyone tends to look outward. What's out there, they look at job boards, they hire someone to do their resume. That's all outward facing activities. And I can't tell you the number of people who've written me and said, hey, I just lost my job. Let me know if you hear of anything. I don't even know what you do. I don't even know what you're looking for. And so people don't know what to tell you. If they had said, you know what, I have my 6 Sigma black belt and I'm looking for a process improvement role in a medium-sized financial institution because I'm really good at saving companies money by improving processes. And last year I saved my company $1 million. I'm going to remember that. And the next time someone says, hey, we're looking for a process improvement person, that person's going to pop into my head. But when you just say, let me know if you hear of anything, and that's what people say, I'm going to forget about you. I won't even remember. So it's not just knowing yourself isn't just for clarity and confidence and being able to pursue the right things. It also enables you to really share a compelling message so people can truly understand your value and they can help you or know if you're the right fit for what they're looking for.
That goes to the show the world module, right? Or
yeah. Not? So find yourself is that inward look. Am I on the right track? This is the time to think about, should I pivot into something else? Should I look for a promoted version of what I was doing, like a promotion? Should I go deeper? Am I more of a subject matter expert? Here I am climbing the ladder, getting further and further away from what I really want to do. And then blaze your path is now, well, how do I take all the information I learned about myself and look at my opportunities and make a decision on the opportunity that's going to be best for me? And then show the world is, okay, lock and load. We're ready to share the message with other people through practical methods like my LinkedIn profile, like job interviews, like cover letters and resumes. And so I help people with some guest contributors in the book really be able to share a compelling message. Because I'll tell you, when I was hiring people, one of the things I looked for was confidence. I loved hiring, not cocky people. I loved hiring confident people. And if you are not really sure if you're a good fit for a role, if you don't really know what your assets are and what you bring to the table, if you don't really clearly understand what you do best that they need most, you're not going to go in there projecting confidence that I am the right person for you. And I really think that's not very compelling, because if you think about it, probably about 80% of people, I've read statistics that like 75% of managers don't feel they're competent for their job. So you've got all these people walking around with low confidence and imposter syndrome, and people pick that up in the job interview.
Which makes sense, I think, Kristin, because especially if you are considering a career pivot, developing your pitch or developing your sense of what it is that you want to be doing next will also help you cut through the noise as well. I mean, okay, now having the luxury as an employee to choose a career, especially nowadays with the COVID, is not that easy. But I think that the clarity, that by having the clarity to know what you don't like and to spearhead your, let's say, your new adventure or job search with the specifics that you are looking for, this is more likely to lead you to what is expecting you than to, as you said, to a potentially new failure in your career path.
Yeah, and it's really
Hmm?
it's really not that difficult to create that conversation. It's hard for people, but it's really, if you break it down into a formula, it's really easy. What are you looking for? And if you don't know, you're not ready to be putting yourself out there yet. But what are you looking for? I'm looking for a role where I can do this. If you know the industry, if you know the size of the company, if you know the target company, I'm looking for a talent acquisition role at Amazon. Like, if you know what you want, say what you want. And then what are the skills, the strengths, and the experiences? So I have 10 years of experience in talent acquisition with a placement rate of 99%. And in 18 months, 95% of my hires are still in place. Like, just say something that proves out that you are skilled at whatever it is you're looking for. And that really shows the results that they can expect. So what are you looking for? What are the strengths and skills that you bring to the table? And what is the value that they're going to expect to receive from you? Think about two people. One person comes up to you in a networking conversation. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm looking for a job. Oh, what are you looking for? Well, times are tough. I'll just take anything, really. And then someone who comes up and says what I just said, it's who are you going to notice? Who are you going to want to help? You have to help people help you.
Listen, I think you are very correct in that, and you even need to employ some effective communication and salesmanship skills in pitching for your new job or your new career milestone. And it certainly helps to know where you're going. But my question is, if I don't know where I am, if I don't know what specific new path I want to take next, what do? I stay where I am until I figure it out. I quit with a buffer or whatever for a few months, and I try to work things out. Let's see, how do I transition from my current, let's say, unhappy work experience into the future, into the career of my dreams, until I figure out what that is?
Okay, so it's not as hard as people think. People say, oh my gosh, I'm trying to get here and go there. But guess what? The movement isn't one step. I'm not moving from an operations manager. So I transitioned from IT, software development, into operations management. You don't just go from everyone thinks that their career move has to be the next step instead of laying the foundation. So here's what you do. You do this exploration and you do that ideal day and the things you like doing and what are some opportunities. Then you look at job descriptions. What are they asking for? What are the gaps? And you maybe list 3 or 4 opportunities you're interested in. What are the gaps that I would need to fill? Do I need a SaaS certification? Do I need an Azure certification? Do I need a degree for this? Can I just reorganize my resume with transferable skills? So what are my gaps? And then how feasible is it to fill those gaps? So you have to rate low, medium, high. Which opportunities is there a pretty high chance that I could fill those gaps? And you do that over time. So maybe there's so many free courses online at recognized accredited institutions nowadays. Can you take some classes? Can you get a mentor? Can you look for stretch opportunities where you are to do some of those things? So I'll give you an example. I was managing a woman who was a training coordinator. She delivered instructor-led training. She led new hire orientation, and she managed our learning management system. So she had a technical piece to her role. But she wanted to get into UX design. So what I did was I hooked her up with a mentor in our organization. She started to take some classes on her own. I connected her to do some stretch projects in our design team, and she started to have just little projects on the side that as part of her professional development. And that's what she does now, because she just took little steps working with a mentor of someone who's in the field she wanted to be in, taking some classes, doing some hand-on stretch projects. And before you know it, you've got the class on your resume, you've got the project that you completed on your resume. It's incremental. And so you just start laying the foundation for that, and eventually you can move over into it. So I had a 5-year plan to transition my career, and it took me 4. And I went from a programmer, a software developer, to leading a learning and development group in 4 years, because I decided that if I went into operations at that company and I learned the business, that would bring value to the learning environment, because I understood the bread and butter of the business. I understood how the business worked. So what did I do? I reached out to the learning. Well, first of all, I got into operations. I networked in the company. I went and did a job doing business intelligence. So I understood the business from the back end, from a data, because I could move from IT into analytics. So now I was analyzing the data in the business and creating business insights. That allowed me to move into operations. Then I contacted L&D and said, look, I'll help be a content subject matter expert for your courses, since the courses are all based on for operations employees mostly. So I volunteered to be a subject matter expert. I reviewed their training. I gave feedback. I volunteered to conduct some of the training. So I went and facilitated. So by the time a position came open in L&D, everyone in that department knew how helpful I was, because I had helped them and helped lead courses. So it made perfect sense. So it's all about relationship building. It's about what are the incremental skills that I need to be building toward that. How can I get a mentor in that area that will guide me on what I need to know and do? I'll tell you what, Philippos, the number one thing you need to have is initiative, because people do this. Well, I want to get a job. Can you tell me if you know anyone? Instead of coming to you and saying, Philippos, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and I see you know A, B, and C person at this company. I'm interested in joining the organization, and here's why. And would you mind introducing me for an informational interview? That shows initiative. I will help people who do that. But 99% of people are like, oh, just can you introduce me to someone? Yeah, you've got to show initiative.
What I also
I get
think
passionate about that.
what I also think about initiative is this: is that, I mean, you are vertical and horizontal. Let's say progress and mobility in the organization where you worked for so many years is really compelling. And I mean, you basically created the circumstances needed for you to pivot from one department to another, from computer to operations to L&D. How? By taking initiative, right? So, but the vast majority of people I know in organizations, especially in my area of the world, they do not take initiative. They stay in a cubicle and they simply live within the confines of their job description.
Yeah.
So the idea that my manager or my leader or my boss or my employer will see and understand and ascertain that I'm unhappy, it's the illusion of transparency, right? But they can see I'm unhappy. Why do I need to bring it up with them? They can see and they don't do anything about it. So it's a vicious circle of which can lead many people to depression. Why? Because, okay, I'm in a certain, let's say that I am an accountant, okay, in a big, let's say, Big Four firm. I'm unhappy. I'm doing audits. I'm doing financial reporting. I'm unhappy. I would rather be doing blockchain-related advisory stuff, okay? Within the same firm. But because I am under the illusion that my superiors know that I'm unhappy and they do nothing about it, I do nothing. In my experience, I like that there is a truism that we have in Cyprus and in Greece, that we are not trees. We are not trees.
Right.
I mean, if you are not happy, you need to move. I mean, you need to move, and it's up to you to create the circumstances, as you said, the networking, the relationships, to create a business plan or whatever, so that you can get closer to where it is that you want to go. In my case, for example, I was really enjoying delivering presentations to lawyers, training them. So although I was a bit burned out doing corporate law and taxation, I had a frank discussion with our HR manager, a great lady, and I took initiative to take things where I wanted to take them. So the initiative is key, because to redesign your job or to augment it and to add elements of it that you enjoy, if you don't move and if you don't take initiative yourself to get there, and you are correct, you need milestones. You may need some certificates. You may need to nurture some relationship with some other key players in the organization, but it's doable.
Yeah, it's absolutely doable. I've transitioned my career 5 times, and I'm not talking going from a business analyst to a project manager. I was working in nonprofit. I worked in state government in a university, and then I was a programmer, and then I was an analytics person, and then I was in operations management, then I was in L&D, and now I'm an entrepreneur. I was not qualified for most of the jobs that I was offered. But my ambition and the initiative is what got attention, because the majority of people take the path of least resistance. So I teach this to my sons. So when my sons take a copy of their resume, when they go to, they're 19 and 22, when they take a copy of their UMAP and their resume to a job interview, when they ask intelligent questions, they get offers in the interview, because most of the kids are like, no, do you have any questions for me? No, no. So they stand out. It's not hard to stand out, Philippos, because most people are taking the path of least resistance. So just a few little things to stand out. And you said something really key when you said about designing your job. I always remind people, you are the architect of your career, not the leadership in your organization. Your manager's job is to support your development, but you own it. And I've always loved the Jim Rohn quote that says, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. Not much, because they have their own plans for themselves.
It's what Gary Vee, I remember a short video by Gary Vee saying, it got viral. If you are not dreaming big enough for yourself, no one is going to do it for you. Meaning that, no one will take you where you want to go if you don't decide it for yourself. The other point I wanted to raise in the context of pivoting, how compelling is the imposter syndrome, and which is often at play when you try to pivot into a new environment where you do not really feel as strong as you felt in your previous job. Do you think that the imposter syndrome is something that prevents people from pivoting, or which takes a significant toll or erodes the confidence for doing the next step?
Yeah, absolutely.
Feeling like a fraud or feeling insufficient in your new...
Yeah, so I did research on this exact topic for the book we'll talk about later. I did research on this topic, and the majority of people will not apply for a job unless they meet most of the requirements, because they just feel like, well, they're not going to hire me, so I'm not going to waste my time. That is not true. That is not true. If you stand apart and set yourself apart, and you show that you're hungry for it, not in a stalker kind of way, but if you really demonstrate your interest, you take the time to map out all of your results that you've got. Like, you look at the job description. What do they want? What do I have that relates to that? 85% of skills are transferable from job to job. So I once had a client who said to me, I said, you'd be a really good business analyst. And she was working, doing billing at a chiropractor's office. And she said, I don't even know what that is. Well, she had technical writing in her background. And I said, well, the two things that business analysts do most is they liaise between groups and they gather requirements and they write this documentation, and they're that liaison between the groups to get the software built. And so I said, have you ever liaised between groups? And she said, oh yeah, as a technical writer, I had to liaise between all the groups. And I said, have you ever gathered requirements? And she said, well, yeah, I had to gather requirements for the technical manuals I was going to write. I'm like, so you already have the transferable skills. It doesn't matter what the job title is. People look at a job and say, oh, I've never done that before. But when you break down the job, it's leading people, managing meetings, managing deadlines and processes. It's liaising, it's managing emotions, it's dealing with conflict, it's delegating, it's writing, it's editing. Like, yeah, that's what the job is. The job is a series of skills, and you don't even know what you've got in your backpack because you just look at your job title and not your toolkit of things that you have.
I've read something that I think was it on your LinkedIn profile, that if you are on the inside of a jar, you cannot see the label outside. Is it yours?
Yeah, I always say you can't read the label when you're inside the jar.
Because you don't really realize the transferable skills that you have accumulated over your previous career, and you think that everyone is born with communication skills, everyone is born with meeting deadlines, time management. But really, you are correct. It's a matter of ascertaining through the self-awareness and the introspection that we said. Wait, hold on a minute. I mean, I can go out and sell. I can go out and talk and communicate. And I mean, these are negotiate. These are all powerful skills.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you know what the analogy I use to help people understand this. Your whole career, all you've done is swim in a 4-foot pool. You can touch the ground, you're familiar, you can reach the sides, just this little kiddie pool. And all of a sudden, this big hand picks you up and drops you into a 12-foot pool. And you're like, I can't do that. I've never been in a pool where I can't touch the bottom. It's so deep, it's so huge. And you get dropped in the pool, but what happens? You flail around for a minute, but then you're like, wait a minute. I know how to swim. I can do this. And you start swimming. And then someone picks you up out of the 12-foot pool and drops you into the ocean. Oh my goodness. I can't swim in the ocean. I've never swam in the ocean, but you know how to swim. And so you'll flail around a little bit at first in that new environment. But those things that you know will kick in. You have to trust that you'll be able to figure it out. And now I'm not saying to go from being a dental hygienist to a brain surgeon, like specialty occupations, you obviously need training. But when we're talking about the business world in particular, those skills transfer. They're portable competencies you can pick up and drop into a different situation and know what you're doing.
I've read a quote a few months before I left my previous job, which went like this. I can't remember the writer. It said, sometimes it's time to try something new and trust the magic of new beginnings. Basically, what you said is correct. Unless you take that leap of faith and you make that leap into the new, to the bigger pool or into the ocean, you will not be able to see how capable you are and how competent you are.
I had a guy ask me a question early in my career. He tried to offer me a job that I wasn't qualified for, and I kept trying to decline the job. And I said, I'm not qualified for this job. I don't know how to do these things. And he said the most important thing of my career. He said, I'm not asking you if you know how to do this. I'm asking you if you can learn it. And that reshaped my thinking. Can I figure it out? can I read books at night? Can I practice? Of course I can learn it. And that's what I did. I accepted the job, and it was a learning curve, like a crazy learning curve, because I was not a technical person. But can you learn it? And so you only really have to be able to connect some stories to the things that you know. And if there's one piece of the job, like I hired someone who didn't have learning management experience when I was in L&D, but she had facilitation experience and she was really great with people. I can train her on the learning management system. It's not rocket science. I wanted the things that she brought to the table, her confidence, that she was that first friend of the employees and really could build good relationships with people. That was way more important to me than if she knew how to add courses to a learning management system. You can't teach attitude. You can't teach that confidence. You can't teach those relationship building skills compared to someone who has them. But you can train anybody to use a learning management system. So it was a no-brainer for me, and she worked out to be a great hire. More managers need to have that mentality of looking at potential, not looking at people's backstory.
Yeah, can you learn this? It's a different prism if you think about it. It's a completely different mindset. If you ask somebody whether they can learn something, so you encourage them as well to look at things in a more promising way. And talking about managers, Kristin, you gave me a pass to pivot into your next book that really caught my attention as well. your team loves Mondays, right? The question is
Right.
the emphasis. What does it take to love Mondays? Is it easy? Is it the default setting, or is it the default setting to hate Mondays?
So I think most people come to work motivated, and then things start to demotivate them. Everyone comes to work wanting to do a good job, but then there are things that demotivate them. So you can get demotivated because you're not a fit for the role. You don't have the traits, you don't have the natural orientation. But then you can have a manager that demotivates you. They're not flexible with you. They don't help you with a career vision, that you don't feel valued by them. There's no development opportunities. They have poor leadership skills. That could be poor communication. It could be the number one thing when I do management workshops that people say that they don't like about their manager is their manager is threatened by their strengths and skills, like what they do well. And so they want to keep them under a lid so they don't shine and outshine their manager. There could be conflict on the team that the manager ignores, or they could be the one introducing conflict, or they could create these unrealistic workloads where they're like just hammering you with too much work or not enough meaningful work. The realistic workload goes both ways: too little challenge or way too much challenge. So when when managers are doing those things, instead of looking for opportunities to praise you for your good work or encouraging openness in your relationship with them, really promoting autonomy for you and helping you make your own decisions, treating you fairly, being supportive. There's so many things, like being open to the feedback that your team gives you, treating a mistake like a learning opportunity instead of making a person feel like they're awful because they made a mistake, which everyone does. And what managers really don't do is capitalize on the talent of their people. There are people who have untapped potential, and the best managers find that untapped potential and give their employees opportunities to expand their reach and their impact.
I find, and you quote a Gallup survey, that 9 out of 10 people are not naturally wired to become managers. Is correct? So
Right.
if you combine that with a separate statistic, again by Gallup, saying that 85% of employees are not engaged, I think that that's a recipe for disaster, out of the box right there. So as you know, I devoted my last book on the topic of engagement, the Marvel, and I'm still trying to get into the grips of the puzzle of motivation. At the end of the day, I think that managers are the critical factor in in retaining team members. I think that the quality of management is perhaps the make it or break it for me. And managers need training. I think
Oh,
managers
yeah.
need training.
Yeah, because what you just said, 9 out of 10 people are not wired. Most people who are strong individual contributors are accountable.
Mhm.
But then when you put an accountable person into a leadership role, they don't delegate. So, because they want to take ownership of everything themselves. Or they micromanage people because they're accountable for it. And they don't transfer accountability and authority and decision making to the employee that they're delegating to. So a lot of times when people are excelling as individual contributors, they're promoted to managers, and they're really set up for failure because you almost have to be antithetical to the strong individual contributor to be a good leader. You have to know how to let go. You have to know how to share the glory and highlight and spotlight your team. And you're used to getting all that yourself as an individual contributor.
Yeah, I think there is a mismatch in the qualities of a great executioner compared to a great manager. So you're correct. The default path into management is you are a great executioner, you are a great performer. Let's make you a manager. Okay,
Yeah.
you deserve more money, you deserve more benefits because you bring more benefits to the firm. So let's make you a manager. You're absolutely correct. I think that the recipe for being a good manager is completely different and antithetical as well. And another dimension that I think is relevant, and we can wrap this up later on with the management topic, is the intergenerational dynamics in the workplace also have a major impact. Something that you also mentioned in your UMAP book, which has to do with the values alignment, is a big chapter for me. I think that a mismatch in values is often overlooked by organizations as to why people leave. And it's the responsibility of both the employees and the organizations to understand whether they are a good fit for each other. And that's a big one, especially in the area of law and accounting, where there are huge amounts of money at stake. Sometimes corners are being cut. So there is a lot of that going on. I think that a mismatch in values is also a component of demotivation. The challenge, you mentioned the challenge, if employees are over challenged, they can panic and they can suffer from anxiety and you lose them. If they are under challenged, they get bored. So I think that it's a never-ending cycle of continuous work. What do you think is the new environment? How is the management landscape affected by COVID?
I think it's really difficult because a lot of managers are not meeting regularly with their employees as it is. And so now you've got this distributed environment where people aren't together. And we already have this issue of assumptions, right? People make assumptions about people's behavior. I make assumptions about why you gave me that feedback. You make assumptions about why I did something the way I did. And assumptions are really what create a lot of interpersonal conflict. We assume someone's motivation instead of just being open and talking about it. But now you don't have the benefit of body language, or any of that. So now you're removing different aspects of communication and you just have, this voice. But I talk to a lot of people and it shocks me when they say, no, I don't have regular meetings with my manager. It's like having a car. You get this brand new car. It's like the brand new employee, and you drive it and you drive it and you drive it, but you don't check the oil. You don't check any of the instrumentation. You just keep driving it. And then one day you're on the side of the highway and it just breaks down. That's what happens with the relationships. If you're not building the relationship, the smallest thing is going to break that relationship down. And how do you know what's going well? What could be different or better? What's preventing the improvements? What needs to change? How can I help you? Who's having those conversations if you're not meeting?
You're absolutely correct. In my book, I mentioned I used the example of the Valentine's dinner. That you have this couple that their marriage is collapsing, and once in a year they have this Valentine's dinner and they sing their praises and they give gifts. And at the end, what I say is that, I mean, if you expect that going on a Valentine's dinner once a year is going to help you save your marriage, it's the same as expecting that your annual performance review will keep your employees motivated and engaged. So you're absolutely correct. You need constant communication, especially now with the COVID, that the distance is even, the chasm is even bigger, the physical and the mental as well, because of a number of things going on in the psychology of people. And the challenges are there for many to grasp. Kristin, we are almost 1 hour, you see, and I have material here for 3 podcasts. I think let me move to the next point concerning your new books, because I've really lost count of the books that you've published and the ones coming up. I've seen that, and then we will see a few comments, and I will let you take the stage and tell me about your future plans. First of all, tell me about the new You've Got Gifts children books. Sounds like a mini UMAP sort of spin-off for kids. What's that about?
I'm really, really excited about You've Got Gifts. So You've Got Gifts is a practical but fun book to actually walk kids through and identify their actual strengths. So it's not just, oh, you're special and you've got gifts. It teaches the kids. So there's a fun story, but then at the back, it teaches them how to build their own talent story. And there's an activity for teachers as well as parents to engage in meaningful conversations for kids to look inward at what they're naturally good at. And the reason I wrote this book, and it's the first one in the world, by the way, because when my publisher,
really? Wow.
When my publisher gave me the list of categories, there is no category for children's fiction or nonfiction for talents or strengths. The category doesn't exist. So I'm like, I had to pick other categories because there's no category to help kids discover their talent. If you
There's your creative genius. There's your creative genius.
Well, I think so. There are other people writing books about strengths, but they're writing for an adult audience. So you don't have a lot of children's book authors writing for this audience. But the reason I wrote for children is because in working with adults would continuously tell me that when they were children, they thought that their talents were flaws because that's what they were told by the adults in their life. You do this, you're to this. And it was really people looking at what I call the shadow side or the dark side of a talent. So for example, kids that become researchers, like kids who grow up to become researchers, were very curious as children. So they asked a million questions and drove their parents crazy, constantly asking questions. People who become troubleshooters and problem solvers, there are lots of roles that people are troubleshooters. They take things apart when they're kids because they want to figure out what's wrong with something, how things are so they're destructive. They're told they're destructive as children, but really they're just using their natural gifts. And I got so tired of hearing adults think that this beautiful talent they had was a flaw that I thought I need to reach people sooner because we form our ideas and our beliefs by age 8. And so I wrote the books for 5 to 8-year-olds.
So 5 to the audience for the book is 5 to 8-year-olds. So
elementary, kindergarten, kindergarten to about 3rd grade. Yeah.
And this is out. The first one is out. It's 4. It's a series of 4, right?
Yeah, it's and for your listeners, if they go to blackrosewriting.com and they either search my name or search the title of the book, I think you have to use the apostrophe for it to show up. You've Got Gifts. You can get 15% off on pre-order right now using code pre-order 2020 if you want to save some money. It's on Amazon too for pre-order, but I don't have a code for Amazon.
I'll pick one up for my son. It sounds fantastic, and it's really, I think that you're doing a tremendous job. Yeah, I agree with you that kids who run contrary to the the official narrative or how things should of how they should be growing up, and it also stigmatizes people as well.
Mm-hmm. There was one of the kids who was a beta reader that I was so impressed with the way he presented himself. Mm-hmm. And because I spoke with him and his mother, and he did a video after reading the book and found out that he has a strength called presence. And people who have presence often go into public speaking in their roles because they can command an audience really well. They're very good. They're natural leaders. Leadership is a natural mantle. And this kid was 7, and he had no idea that was the thing for him. But when he saw the gift in the book, he immediately recognized, that's me. And so now he can...
Kristin, I cannot hear you. I think the sound is... Can you check your sound?
I accidentally hit the mute button.
It's back.
On my
it's great. So the book will help kids see that their talents can be really developed into strengths when they grow up, right?
Absolutely. And the thing I love most about the book, it's got a woodland fairy and all of these gifts open with fairy dust and create all these images. And I'm really proud of the diversity of the book. We have differently abled kids in wheelchairs. We have kids of all different ethnic backgrounds in the book. So I'm really proud of the diversity because I wanted kids to be able to see themselves in the characters. But what I love most about the book isn't the story. I love the activity with the parents and with the teachers, because parents and kids, when they don't get along, it's because they have opposing talents. And a lot of people don't realize that. So for example, the parent has responsibility as a strength where they do the right thing and they do what they say they're going to do, and they're very accountable and they're on time for everything. And then they have a child that has what we call the adaptability strength. They're flexible, they can pivot, they just stop, drop, and roll, they go with the now, and those things conflict with each other. And responsibility and adaptability, parent and children, tend to have a lot of conflict. And so what I want parents to do is to have these very safe conversations. So I have questions that they can talk about. Where are we the same and where are we different? And does that cause conflict for you and for me? And it creates this really healthy environment for them to actually talk for the first time ever. And one of the beta reader parents said to me, I'm embarrassed to say I've never had these types of conversations with my children. And I said, don't be embarrassed. How would you ever know to talk about this? It's why I wrote the book.
I certainly need to pick up a copy because I can see where you're coming from as it regards clashes with my own kids. So hopefully I will manage to. Okay. A friend, let's see a few comments and then we wrap it up, okay? Let's see a few comments. Nikos Kaligas. Hello, Nikos. Philippos, you should make 3 more talks with Kristin. I've told you we have material for 3 podcasts. Thank you, Nikos. Nikos wrote a few more comments. Let's see. Yorgos Terzis. Hello, Yorgos. Thank you for your comment. What about the training? Let's make some short comments if we can, Kristin.
Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, he's exactly right in that 66% of the people for my research for the book said they received 0 management training. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to pay for these expensive programs. Assign a mentor to walk alongside that person where they have check-ins. And if you just pair someone with a mentor as they're a new manager in the organization, that can go a long way if you don't have training. You can work up to a training, but really on the job is where people learn.
Absolutely. So a mentor on the spot is somebody who can really help you take your game to a new level. So George, you are absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Another question by Nikos. Kristin, would really like to know your opinion on this. What to put on LinkedIn headline when you're unemployed and seeking to change career? That's a big question.
Great question. So think about 3 things you do best. And if you know the type of role you want, that's great. So if you want to do operations leadership, developing people, increasing profits, improving processes. So if you know the type of title you want, include it. But if you don't, you can do a result-oriented sentence. So I turn around underperforming territories. But if you do a couple of key words of the functional areas of what you really love and do best, asking people, what do I do best? Going through that ideal day exercise, those are keywords you can be found on by recruiters.
That's fantastic. And the last one, how to answer this question honestly in an interview. If you left a job because you're unhappy, right? So why did you leave your last job? Let's say the HR asks you, why did you leave your last job?
This is a really great opportunity to show how your wisdom, where you say, I left my last role because there were some things about the role that weren't a fit when I evaluated the skills I'm really good at, the strengths I enjoy, and my values. And that's why I'm here interviewing today, because I didn't want to make that same mistake. So I made sure that my strengths and skills and value align to this opportunity. And that's why I'm interviewing with you today, because this is a much better fit for me. So you can turn it into a positive. I wouldn't go into specifics, but you could say that there were some values misalignments with the culture. You could say, it's a great place. It just wasn't the right fit for my values. And that's why I researched your values at this organization and found that putting people first, respect for the individual, and having empathy for customers, that aligns to my values. You can speak back the values of that organization and connect yourself to it. Flip that into a positive and connect yourself to them as the example.
That's a great way of putting it. So you also show that you are a person of character, so that values matter to you.
Yeah.
I think that should answer it. These are the questions. I would also kindly ask Kristin to let us know of her future plans. I know there is another book coming up for adults, the Maximize 365. Can you give us a sort of the blurb around that project? Because it sounds exciting.
So a lot of advice is very motivational, but it doesn't really give you the application and the practical information to be able to do something with it. So I wanted to write a book in 5 areas: health and wellness, spirituality, relationships, career, and finances. And so there are 73 entries in those 5 areas. And so there's an inspirational quote, but then there's a blurb about it, about the topic. And then here's an idea for action, how you can get start getting immediate results. And over time, as you work through the examples in your greatest area of need, you slowly transform your life over time with this continuous professional improvement. And it's personal and professional. So yeah, it's really just to maximize your life.
So it's a page, a code, and
they're daily entries
per day. It's like that.
So for example, there's entries on imposter syndrome, mindless eating, how to build wealth, how to answer tell me about yourself in an interview, how to deal with conflict, people who are crossing your boundaries, and what's one thing. Like sometimes people just need the language of what to say, and sometimes people need to know I'm worth it to draw these boundaries. So I do deal with the psychology. I have a master's certification in brain-based coaching and a degree in neuroscience. So I bring a lot of psychology to my work. So getting your mindset in the right place and then giving you the actual tools, language, or tips or tricks you need to know to move that forward so you can make a change in your life.
When is it due to be 2021?
Yeah, that doesn't come out until February of next year. It'll probably be available for pre-order this fall, but it's not coming out until February.
Fantastic. Any other things you would like to tell our viewers about your future plans, and then we call it a day, Kristin?
Yeah, so the kids' books will come out every 3 months. So you've got values, teaching kids how to identify their values and make sure their friends align with their values and their career choices someday. You've got skills will come out 3 months after that, and then you've got personality. And Next, I'll be writing UMAP for relationships, to use the principles of UMAPs to help
Wow.
in marriages, in family relationships, parent-child, and work relationships.
You're taking the UMAP concept to the stratosphere of themes,
Relationships.
of
Yeah, not just
relationships as well.
careers. Yeah.
Well, Kristin, here I think we can call it a day. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for being a guest. You know that we share many things in common, and we are passionate about quite a few important chapters in business and in management. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your experience and for sharing your wisdom with us. Hopefully, we will have the chance to do another podcast when you have down the line, when you have your new book ready as well. And thank you to our viewers for being with us, for sharing their comments, and have a fantastic weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye,
so
Kristin.
much. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Ciao. Bye.
I save a prayer for those who care. I keep the faith, but no one will dare to hold my hand until the end. When all the pieces fall into place, my body's weak, the mind is tired, but there's a fire that heals deep inside. I close my eyes and stretch my soul to gather up the nerve to carry on.
I like your song.